Good morning. The following reading is an excerpt from Parable of the Sower, a science fiction novel by the late Octavia Butler. The novel, published in 1996, is set in, well, our present. In a United States that is falling apart due to social and economic inequality, the effects of climate change, and government corruption. I did mention that this is science fiction, right? In dealing with these many changes, the main character, Lauren Olamina, creates a religion that she names Earthseed. In this excerpt, she is talking to a traveling companion about Earthseed. We lounged in the shade of pines and sycamores, enjoyed the sea breeze, rested, and talked. I wrote, fleshing out my journal notes for the week. I was just finishing that when Travis sat down next to me and asked his question. "You believe in all this Earthseed stuff, don't you?" "Every word," I answered. "But you made it up." I reached down, picked up a small stone, and put it on the table between us. "If I could analyze this and tell you all that it was made of, would that mean I'd made up its contents?" He didn't do more than glance at the rock. He kept his eyes on me. "So what did you analyze to get to Earthseed?" "Other people," I said. "Myself, everything I could read, hear, see, all the history I could learn. My father was a minister and a teacher. My stepmother ran a neighborhood school. I had a chance to see a lot." "What did your father think of your idea of God?" "He never knew." "You never had the guts to tell him." I shrugged. "He's the one person in the world I worked hard not to hurt." "Dead?" "Yes." "Yeah, my parents too." He shook his head. "People don't live long these days." There was a period of silence. After a while, he said, "How did you get your ideas about God?" "I was looking for God," I said. "I wasn't looking for mythology or mysticism or magic. I didn't know whether there was a God to find, but I wanted to know. God would have to be a power that could not be defied by anyone or anything." Change. Change, yes. But it's not a God. It's not a person or an intelligence or even a thing. It's just, I don't know, an idea. I smiled. Was that such a terrible criticism? "It's a truth," I said. "Change is ongoing. Everything changes in some way. Size, position, composition, frequency, velocity, thinking, whatever. Every living thing, every bit of matter, all the energy in the universe changes in some way. I don't claim that everything changes in every way, but everything changes in some way." Thank you, Bob, for your music. Thanks, Sharon, for leading the service and your story. Also want to thank the hospitality team for being so hospitable, and thanks to the AV team as well. If you don't know me, my name is John Davies. I've been a member here at UUCDC for about 12 years now. Started coming in 2012 and became a member not long after that. Also should thank all of you for being here. I thought I'd be giving this to my family and to Bob and Sharon. So thanks. In his September 29th service on the transformative power of love, Reverend Ed defined love as a spiritual discipline at the heart of Unitarian Universalism's acknowledged shared values, as stated in the updated Article 2 of the Unitarian Universalist Association's bylaws. Since then, over the last 2 months, we've emphasized how our values are interconnected. Whether learning to let cultural humility guide our efforts in building a just and equitable world, or finding our true place in nature through a deeper connection with the world that we live in, we've been given opportunities to reflect on how our Unitarian Universalist values can shape us and guide us, how they can be put into action, and how they can contribute to our collective transformation. And as we move into the meteorological winter and turn from harvest festivals to solstice celebrations, as another semester winds down, and as one presidential administration gives way to another, transformation has been very much on my mind. The work of transformation is grounded in liberating love and inseparable from our other Unitarian Universalist values. To quote from Article 2, transformation, we adapt to a changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. Let's think about that. Never complete and never perfect. Anyone who's ever made a New Year's resolution knows that. But collective transformation is another, a bigger story. The Unitarian Universalist Reverend Shige Sakurai writes, transformation is not just for individuals. It is also about communities and institutions. It is not a one-time process. Transformation is a spiritual practice and a way of life. Writing in 2015 about the motivations behind the UUA's emphasis on inclusion, Reverend Tracy Robinson Harris used the words of the late Black feminist theorist and author Bell Hooks, in asking us to, quote, recognize that our lives are intertwined, so intertwined that each is accountable to the other. Every particular story and truth calls us to accountability, calls me to accountability for my life, my limits, my individual, and our collective transformation. Sakurai and Robinson Harris call on us as Unitarian Universalists to change ourselves as we seek to change Unitarian Universalism and the world we live in. These complementary perspectives remind us that we experience transformation as a continuing process in both small and profound ways. As individuals with consciences, as participants in Unitarian Universalist communities, and as part of the interdependent web of life, change works in us, through us, and among us, to borrow a phrase. Earlier drafts of this sermon had a lot more theology in them, almost all of which is now gone. You're welcome. But I wanted to keep this UU-adjacent perspective on change, which is in the ideas found in Parable of the Sower, which I read an excerpt from earlier. In this, the main character, Lauren, develops the religion that she names Earthseed because she believes that humanity's destiny lies in the stars. Earthseed is based on the idea that God is change, or as Butler more poetically puts it, all that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. Another verse states, we do not worship God. We perceive and attend God. We learn from God. With forethought and work, we shape God. Now, Butler wasn't a Unitarian Universalist, but she sure sounds like one. The focus on adaptability and resilience in these verses and other verses presented in the novel are major themes of the novel. Lauren realizes, as do those who accompany her, that changing times require changing outlooks and ways of being. Lauren exhibits both resilience and self-awareness, as well as an awareness of her circumstances. She realizes the importance of connection with those she finds herself with, and she makes those connections. In those ways, Lauren adapts successfully to her circumstances, transforming herself into a leader in the process. Butler's handling of the themes of resilience and adaptation speak very well to our own times. But we don't need to develop a new religion. We have Unitarian Universalism. And much as Lauren does, we need to accept transformation as a fact of life during a time of great change for ourselves, our congregation, our nation, and our world. Acknowledging and living out our Unitarian Universalist values allows us to better understand and work for positive forms of transformation and push back against the forces of reaction. For our purposes this morning, I want us to think about transformation at the level of interactions between and among individuals, transformations involving institutions and between institutions and individuals, and finally, transformations centering on challenges to the social and cultural norms and structures that create and maintain hierarchies and inequalities. In doing this, I'm borrowing from a framework that sociologists use when studying racism and violence. I'm not a sociologist, but it seems like a useful approach. These three levels of interaction aren't sharply defined and tend to blur into one another. So, how might interpersonal transformation take place? How about right here, right now? Or, if this sermon isn't doing it for you, how about in conversation with someone during coffee hour? There are also the breaking bread potlucks and a range of social activities within the congregation. Interpersonal transformation might also take place in talking with the children's youth and in talking with the congregation's children and youth about the religious education classes, or you could have a conversation with their teachers. And speaking of faith formation, which I just was, how many of you adults participate in a Soul Matters group or another small ministry group? If you don't, consider giving it a try. Participation in an adult faith formation class provides another opportunity for interpersonal transformation. I recently took part in the elevator speech class, where we created summaries of our understanding of Unitarian Universalism. I can tell you that I walked away with a deeper knowledge about what connects us as UUs and what our place in the wider world is. But please don't ask me to give you my elevator speech. In any of these interactions that I've just spoken about, no matter what the form or forum, we are able to live our values of generosity and pluralism and open the door to transformation too. These opportunities for interpersonal transformation take place within the institutional setting of this congregation. The range of efforts that I've just mentioned are dependent on the dedication and hard work of church staff and volunteers. Volunteering within the congregation is a form of ministry, but so much more. Whether it's playing to your professional strengths or your personal interests, volunteering in one of our congregation's groups, teams, or committees, or even the board, did I mention I'm vice president of the board? All of these things are an opportunity for interpersonal and institutional transformation. Of course, the best example of collective transformation at the institutional level is our search for a settled minister. A search committee formed from volunteers among us has been in conversation with us about who we are and what we want to become. The committee has provided us with many opportunities to share ideas, hopes, and concerns about the future of this congregation. And some of those ideas and concerns have already been acted on. For instance, the congregation is changing for the better regarding accessibility and inclusion. The search committee is now taking the information it has gathered and will soon be looking for ministerial candidates that might help make our visions reality. Who knows what the future may bring and in what ways we will be further transformed. Other groups within our congregation, such as our social justice and outreach teams, work for transformation outside of the walls of this building. These groups challenge structural injustices in working for social change and addressing the needs of disadvantaged groups within Delaware County. They do so in a variety of ways, making and delivering meals for the hungry and homeless, collecting food for local food banks, calling on lawmakers to address poverty and economic injustice, drawing attention to the victims of gun violence, publicizing and acting on the existential threats of environmental collapse and climate change, as well as highlighting the many harms of racism and other forms of oppression. This is the difficult work of social, cultural, and political transformation, acknowledging pluralism and working for justice and equity, and it's taking place right here among us. Whether at the interpersonal, institutional, or structural level, our congregation lives out its Unitarian Universalist values as it works for collective transformation. Our interactions with one another, our work within larger groups, teams, and committees within UUCDC, and our engagement with the larger world can be seen as forms of transformation. And engaging with Sunday services can sustain us in our work of transformation. Change may be unsettling, especially if it is unwanted or unexpected. And Unitarian Universalist involvement in progressive change has been incomplete and imperfect, if not entirely lacking in some instances. The goal of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love matters more than past failings, though, and in this moment, the stakes are as high as they have ever been. If we reject reaction and despair, and instead think, speak, and act in accordance with our shared Unitarian Universalist values, we will be, as the song goes, which we'll hear in a moment, moving boldly and gracefully into the future. Thank you.